So, good afternoon, everyone, or to some of you, it's probably morning. Very excited about our event today. We are going to do a fireside chat with Wendy Borlabi, who most of you probably know is going to be our featured keynote speaker at our Women's Laundry Network luncheon at the Clean Show. So this is kind of our opportunity to hear from Wendy, get to know Wendy, and hopefully at the end she can give us just a little snippet of what she is planning to share with us at the Clean Show. And then at the very end, I have more details about that luncheon if you want to learn more and register. So for anyone new, just to make sure we're all on the same page of what the goal of our Women's Laundry Network is, it was founded as an effort to connect, collaborate, and empower women in the vended laundry industry. And it provides us a space for support, resources, leadership, and inspiration. So it is a webinar today. So you are not allowed to speak out loud. So we'll be using the chat function. To get started, it would be helpful for everyone, but probably Wendy as well, if you can put your name, your business name, so whether you work for a company or your store name, and where you're from, so we can kind of see where everybody is coming from. So just a little bit of background on Wendy, and this is just a snippet. She's has a lot more experience in this, but I whittled it down to 3 bullets on this slide. So her current position is the Director of Mental Performance and Health for the Chicago Bulls. And prior to that, she was a sports psychologist for the United States Olympic Committee. And before that, a liaison between athletics and the Counseling and Student Development Center at James Madison University. So that is just a snippet. So to get started, Wendy, maybe if you can elaborate a little bit more about your background so everybody understands what you do. And I think people would be interested to know how you got into sports psychology, such an interesting field.
Mhm. Sure. So let me just start with that, how I got into sports psychology. It was actually something I never even heard of. I had graduated undergraduate and was working at a facility for uh, bipolar and depressed adults. I'd been there maybe about 9 months, and a coworker was going to a sports psych conference in New Orleans. And so, knowing that I was an athlete, she asked me if I would go with her. And our job was going to pay for us to go to this conference. Um, and although it's a true story, I hate to admit it, but I literally went to New Orleans and had a great weekend in New Orleans and didn't attend a single sports psychology thing. I don't even know if I even registered for the conference. It was just a great weekend in New Orleans on my job. And
You
then
never tell your boss that, though.
never, no, I came home and said, yes, it was a great conference. All this, all these wonderful things that I learned. And yes, it was all the things. Um, and then fast forward about 3 years later, I had moved to Atlanta. And at that point, I was working with adolescent male sex offenders. And I had, it was a pretty physical job. And I had gotten injured. And I thought, okay, this is not a profession for me. I got to find something else. And so then I started thinking, well, wait, what was that sports psych thing that I went to in New Orleans? And so then I started looking it up, and I found that Georgia Southern and University of Georgia had a master's program. And so I contacted both of them to find out about the program and what really was sports psychology. Was it, what would it entail, and like career wise? And so as I looked more into it, Georgia Southern was answering my questions. University of Georgia never really got back to me, and so I was having dialogue with Georgia Southern, and they were answering my questions, and we were talking, and I thought, this actually sounds like it's like this is a career for me. This would be a really great job. And so I decided to quit my job and move down to Statesboro, Georgia, and start the master's program. And my first semester, second year, is when it clicked for me that it was a realization of, wait, I'm actually really good at this. I can talk to people. I can help them achieve their goals in sports. I can just help them, period. And I get to be around sports. And so I thought if I'm going to do this, I needed to get more education. And I chose to go the clinical route. So my doctorate is in clinical psychology. I chose to go the clinical route because sports psychology, as my advisor said to me then, was and quote unquote, he said, Wendy, this is a lily white field. These white men are not going to let a black woman take their job. And I went, oh, okay. It was definitely an eye-opening, statement and conversation. And so I thought, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to have to have a doctorate, a DR dot in front of my name, because I knew I wanted to have a family and I needed to be able to market myself. And so that's what pushed me into getting my doctorate. But it was nothing that, again, sports psych was nothing that I knew about. It just happenstance career or job, and someone said, "Do you want to go?" And then it turned into this amazing career. They say right place at the right time. So thank goodness that happened. And I, after getting my doctorate, I was at James Madison University, and that was a it's a small town. Harrisonburg, Virginia is a small town, but they let me do all of these things with the different teams, and so I got to really get into like what was sports psychology, like get into how to go to a coach and talk to a coach about what it is that I can do for him and his players, and then show him what that looked like, and then be able to meet with an athlete individually and be able to build a program for a team, and then be able to do presentations, and then what does it look like if we brought a team together to do like a mental toughness activity. I got to really, um, lack of a better term, practice how to do that during my internship. And so they just allowed me to do that. So I really got into knowing how to really perfect my craft, and what that looked like, and figuring out how I can best utilize who I was in my job. And that's what I learned in that process, is that I needed to first and foremost be me, and then do the things that I, know how to do, as opposed to just trying to adapt to everybody else. I needed to stick to who I was. It was a much better space. Um, and so then, yeah, so I said Georgia Southern, or no, Georgia Southern, at James Madison, was there, and was there for several years. And then a career, right? So then I went from there to the Olympics. I was with the
Olympics.
Olympics, and yes, and I'm just gonna like fast forward all this. We can get to more of it later, but was at the Olympics. I started a company with 6 Navy SEALs in the same time as well, and called APG. It was 6 men and myself, and then I ended up selling my part of the company to back to them, and then I started doing some work for the NBA, and then I was moving to Chicago. I was living in San Diego, and I had my twins at the time were 3 years old. I have boy girl twins, and there were three at the time, and I thought they need to be around family. There was no family in San Diego. There was just us, and so they needed to be around family, and so I made the decision to leave beautiful San Diego for
And for
Chicago.
cold Chicago, yeah. That's where I live too, so
Yes, there really is no reason to leave San Diego for Chicago if it's not family. I think that's the only the only real reason to do that. And so I moved. I was moving when I received the offer to work for the Bulls. So I was already coming to Chicago, and then I got the um the call to about for the Bulls, but I wasn't moving for the job. It was moving for family.
So, just curious with the athletes that you've worked with, whether it's the Bulls or is it required that they speak with you, or is it more when they feel they need that support or they're struggling that they seek you out?
Yes, it's definitely not required. It doesn't work that way. It has to be organic. And part of that organic piece is that I am around a lot. And so I go from being Dr. B to Wendy, and we have regular conversations. And so I'm building a relationship, building a trust, and that can be instantly, or it could take a year, depending on the player, or it could take a year and a half, just depending on the player. And in that time, as I'm building the trust, is where um, I start to get to understand and know the player. And so then when something happens and they come and ask me, then I have information because I'm with them. But the reason why it has to be organic from my point of view is that just like anything else that you try to do to make yourself better, you have to practice it. So you
Right.
just don't come and talk to me for 20 minutes and then it's better,
Right.
right? You come talk to me for 20 minutes and I'm going to give you homework and then you're going to have to do it, right? You're going to have to do it at practice. You're going to have to do it at the games. You have to do it with your relationships. You're going to do it when you're watching TV, whatever the case may be, you're going to have to practice it. And so if it's forced that you have to come see me, you're not going to do it. You're not going to do those things. I often like equate it to marriage counseling. If your spouse doesn't want to go to marriage counseling, they may go, but they're just going to sit there. It's not really going to help the marriage. And this is the same thing. It's not really going to work if they don't want to be a part of it and do their part.
So living in Chicago, I am definitely a Bulls fan, and I know you can't talk about players, so we won't get that. But just curious, have you worked with someone in any of this time, or maybe the Bulls, and seen actually their performance like on the court, or I think with the Olympics, was it rowing, that a rowing team that you worked with?
Oh,
But have you seen
no,
like
no.
their performance,
Mhm,
like in their whatever their craft is,
mhm.
improve after you've been able to help them through some maybe, mental struggles that they were going through?
Sure, sure. Actually, yes. So I was, and as a side note with the Olympics, rowing was just one of the teams. I had actually 16 different teams with the Olympics. So
Oh,
I
wow.
was, yes, I was moving. I was doing a lot. Yeah. So I had 16 different teams with the Olympics. Yes, I have. I've seen it several times. My favorite example to share is with a baseball player that I worked with, a Major League Baseball player. Now he is. At the time, he was in college, and he is was very a really great player. And one of the things that we figured out is that he was uh, compartmentalized really well. He did a really great job of compartmentalizing. So, he would whatever would happen in the batting cage, but he's able to let it go, right? It was terrible for relationships if you can imagine because he could just let things go. And
Yeah.
your partner's like, "Wait, let's talk about it." And he's like, "Talk about what?" Because he's done with it, right? But it was great for sport. And so he compartmentalized really well. And when we figured out that when he gets rushed, he starts to make bad decisions when he gets rushed. And so we developed a pre-performance routine um, before he gets into the batting cage, or sorry, into the box, right? So before he gets up the bat, so it was a routine that he would do after every pitch, and what he decided to do was pretty lengthy, but he still would do it. It was his what he made up. And so as the season went on, we saw that he would kind of give it up sometimes and then not, just depending on the situation, he would not do it. And so we got to where it was a goal that you he had to do it regardless. He always had to do it because he would just kind of decide when he would. And which is part of the thing of it we need to make it a natural piece and not something that you go, oh, I'm stressed now, I need to do it. If it's something you're doing all the time, when things are good, you're going to do it. When things are bad, you're going to do it. So then it becomes, just part of you. And so you got to where it was like, you need to do it all the time. And there was there's one particular game where he was up the bat and he did his routine, and the pitcher didn't wait for him to finish and pitch the ball, and umpire called strike, and he stepped out, and he got back in and didn't do the routine. This didn't do the routine, but then stepped out. He caught himself. Then he stepped out and then did the routine. And again, the pitcher didn't wait and pitch the ball. And it was a ball. But he continued to not let that face him. He just continued to do the routine, even though the pitcher was trying to rush him. He just continued to do the routine because he knew that if he did it the way he was supposed to, it would just, he would relax him and he could make better decisions. And in that situation, and it was, I mean, it was a great situation because then in that situation, after the fourth pitch, she actually hit a home run. So it was great. It was great because it reinforced to him that regardless of what's going on, if you stick with what you know, what you've learned to help you be at your best, you're going to perform. Obviously, you're not going to hit a home run every time, but it was, but it was great for that piece, and so that was good to see the evolution of how that went through for him, to learn that that's what something he needs to do, and he doesn't do the same routine to this day, but he still does a routine, and so it is so it's one of the most rewarding things in my opinion, is to see someone that wants to be better, and you help them, and then they actually it clicks, and they start to do it. Yeah, and it's really great.
Like raising children too. That's a
Exactly.
whole other webinar. Um, so I think our Women's Laundry Network task force, the reason that we thought you would be such a valuable speaker to our audience at Clean Show, and if you can touch on it, you did touch a little bit about some of the challenges you may have had specifically being female. So in our laundry world, there's definitely a lot more females becoming owners and when working at some of the companies that provide, the equipment and the technology. But I would say, still predominantly male. So there
Mhm,
there are some challenges. Um, for example, women store owners, sometimes if a repair person comes in, they're expecting to talk to another man. They may be looking for the husband, and
mhm,
we've heard some of those examples. So
mhm.
maybe I gotta believe that you've come across some of these challenges to get to where you're at today. If you can share some of those and any, advice you could give the people listening when they get into kind of those situations.
Mhm. Sure, yeah, yeah, obviously, there were so many, challenges. It's like I'm counting if I can even, pick and choose. I mean, just being the only female. I mean, with the Bulls, I travel with the team as well, and so, like, we have some PR people, which are women, but in our building, besides the secretary, it would just be me, and so, um, there are definitely days where there's so much testosterone coming through that, and there isn't a thought that, perhaps, I'm occupying a space, and how would it affect me, and so having to remind them, and things like, what you were talking about, with like kids. I mean, I often reference, not my kids, but often reference what I do with the players as childlike, for them to have an idea that that it's not just about them, and not just about being a male, but it's what you're learning is actually childish, but it's something we don't do. It's really simple. We just don't do, right? And so, but there's just been so many times where I have found that it has been beneficial for me to be myself. I think I said that at the beginning, that I learned that, and that's something I learned at JMU, because of I had a coach tell me that I couldn't come talk to his players because I was too pretty, and they wouldn't listen to me. And so he didn't want me to come talk to the players, but he wanted me to bring in a male to come do it. And even if I were to tell, which I was like, there isn't a male that can do it here, but he wanted me to tell the person what to say. It, and it was it was such an interesting situation, that he didn't want me to be there, but he wanted me to, because I had the information, to tell somebody else, a male, what to say and what to do. And I was supposed to be at the sidelines as this person did all the work, um, but they wouldn't know how to do it, because I would still be, there's just some nuances, and I'm sure your job too, that you can't tell somebody how to do it. You just know it from all the years of doing it, right?
Right.
And so, and he it was I declined that, and said no, I was not going to do that, and he said then I couldn't work with this team, and I was completely fine with that, and went on, and worked with other teams, um, and but then a situation happened months later, maybe 6 or 7 months later, with a player, and needed, one of the assistant coaches came to me because they needed assistance. They had a player that was suicidal, and they needed someone to help them, and didn't want to use the counseling center. And so then they came to me, and so I was able to work with that player. Um, and but that did not change the coach's mind. It was like it was a one-off. That was I could just do that. Um, and and throughout my tenure there, it never changed with this coach. It was still, I'm a woman and I can't do the job. It needs to be a man. But that entire experience over that 4 years taught me that I needed to be me, because I started to be somebody different to fit who he wanted, so that I could work with the players. I started to act differently. I even started to think, oh, I should dress differently, even though I dress pretty conservative anyways. But I started to be even more conservative, thinking maybe if I wore things that were, two sizes too big, it wouldn't that would, it would be okay. It would be okay. And so I started to shift who I was, but it never made a dent. No matter what I did, it still didn't matter because I was a woman. And so that experience taught me that I needed to be myself, and that um, and in being myself, it allowed me the opportunity to shift and to change for the player and what they needed, but not shift and change who I was. If, meaning that they needed someone to be more aggressive and more assertive, I could be that person because that's who I am. They need someone to be soft. I could still That's still who I am. So I'm still staying in the space of who I was. But I found that if I was to be me, no matter what happened, I was going to be okay with it. As I looked at it, that in the world of sports is that you're going to get fired at some point. That's just part of sports. You're not going to have the job for 20 years. There's always a revolving door. And
Yeah.
so I thought, if I get fired for being myself, I'm actually okay with that. But if I get fired for being somebody else, it means I never got the opportunity to be me, which actually may have been what they needed. But if I get fired for being myself, I'm okay with that, because it's just like I was thinking, I thought about it, and maybe this will help everyone as well. It's just like when you go to a doctor or a dentist or a grocery store. You go to that grocery store and you like it and you continue to go, or you go to that grocery store, like, I don't really like the cashiers there, and so you don't go to it, which is fine. But somebody else will go. You find the one that fits for you, and that's the way that I viewed it. It wasn't a personal thing, that they're going to find what fits for them, and if I'm myself and it doesn't fit, I'm okay with that. But I didn't want to lose who I was, um, just so I could get the job. And I think that was the important piece in that space for me. And so I think, maybe that would be in that space as well, is that as um, the situations come, or someone comes and assumes that you're not the person in charge because you're a woman. um, I don't know if you have to actually um, be more assertive or be more aggressive. It's their thought, it's their loss. um, I will never give up any, or no, I will never stop any opportunities to show somebody that I actually know what I'm doing, and to let you, right, there's
Yeah.
there's always a right, there's always those little times where you can be like, yeah, actually, just to let them know you're wrong and this is what I'm doing. But I would say is to be you, because there's always going to be someone judging you. There's always going to be someone talking about you. And that's what I tell the players as well, is that, you know, it's if you are trying to fit for somebody else, it's just not going to work, because they're going to talk about you anyways. They're going to judge you anyways. That's just human nature, and that's what we do as people. I'd rather them talk about me for me being who I am. It's just an easier space to swallow and understand, as opposed to me trying to be somebody different. And then I'm like, oh, well, they didn't get to know me. They didn't get to hear what I thought or what I was going to do. So they're judging and not really on me.
Yeah. I mean, the example you gave about the coach, I mean, that was his loss if he, didn't want you for you. We do have a question, and just for everyone, feel free that, I'm just kind of asking Wendy questions, but I definitely want participation from the people on. So either in the Q&A section or the chat section, feel free to ask whatever questions you want of Wendy. So The one that we have now is related to helping people through hard things. How do you separate home life from the work you do? So, for example, for store managers, the laundromat store managers managing teams of people who might be experiencing hardships, what would you recommend for the owner in terms of coping with that while at home?
Mm.
And you
Um,
definitely have a home life too with kids, and so
yes, I mean, yeah, absolutely. Well, the short answer is to obviously is to leave it at work, right? That's a short answer, but it's not easier. It's not that easy sometimes. It's definitely not that easy sometimes. Um, I would say is to find something you can do, whether it's at work or maybe it's in the car, but before you get home, that allows you to um, let go or separate what's going on. Because I think, in my experience, that it's because it's part of who you are, especially if you're a person that is caring and wants to help your employees and wants to help them go through whatever situation what is part of it or what's going on with them. You want to be able to be home and be present for your family as well. And so I say find something that's going to allow you to do that, and it could be something simple. I mean, there are times that I've sat at my desk at work and had a cup of hot tea with just silence, and it's 5 or 10 minutes, but it's just a way to let me just kind of decompress. And then I think about what I'm going to do when I get home. And I think that's the other piece of it. So you can have a cup of hot tea. You can play solitaire. I've had someone that's played solitaire, someone that's colored, someone that plays music like really loud on the drive home. So they're singing at the top of their lungs and just getting all of it out. So whatever you decide to do that helps you, that is you're like that's when I'm doing this, that means that I'm doing it. So it's an intentional separation, right? So it's you saying every time I do this, it means I'm separating from work and family. So you have that intentional piece. But then after you do that, the next thing is that, which is really important, is that you have a list or have a thought of what you're going to do when you get home. So you're not just getting home and going, okay, if I was able to get here that, and then the kids, the homework, and dinner, and all those things coming up and at you at one time. So it's when I get home, I'm going to I don't know, take the chicken out so I can start dinner. I mean, something like that, so that we have something tangible. So when you get home, you're doing it, and that leads you to the next thing and the next thing. So you're not just coming home with all of the feelings, but you're giving yourself a chance to let it go. But then you're also giving yourself a task to do that helps you in the next space, which is being home with your family.
good advice. Hopefully that helped the person that asked. That was a good question. Um, Anyone else have questions or want to know anything from Wendy?
I see that there's someone from Nigeria.
Yes. I,
I'm from Ghana. I was born in Ghana, and
uh,
I was like, "Wait, does that say Nigeria?" I was born in Ghana. I came to the United States when I was 4, so I just so hello from
I know. I looked at that too, and I think she was the first one on. So yeah, we have kind of a mix, some Florida, a couple Chicago, mostly our staff is Chicago,
Mhm.
Minnesota, Missouri, DC. But yeah, Nigeria is definitely our furthest attendee. So thanks for joining us.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh,
I have a thought or the
sure.
question, or should I say, um, what are some of the things that you think maybe you go through or someone else or the women have brought up that have been like a sticking point or an issue or that you hear repetitively that they have to face or you guys have to face? Is there something like that?
Can anyone who's on answer what is like an issue that you face on a more regular basis in the industry or could be
Mhm.
personal, I guess.
Mhm.
Let's
Yeah,
see.
because I think that would be beneficial to hear some of those or one of those to help as we move forward in this and not me figure out exactly also to round up the presentation would be good information um, to talk about.
Disregard. I think Brit, yeah, good point, Monica. It's a webinar, so you guys will have to put it in chat. But okay, so being
Yep.
disregarded and not taken
Hmm.
seriously.
Hmm. Yes, yes. Boy, it's interesting that I guess no matter where we are, women, that that happens. I've had more men think that I do this job so I can meet a man, that I don't know anything about sports, but I'm here just so I can meet men. It's the wildest thing to me, as if I had no, right? I have no information, no knowledge, but just so I can meet somebody. So that is interesting, the disregard and the not taken seriously, and I think and that unfortunately maybe something that we may just have to deal with as we, in our lives as women, that we're not taking seriously, that we're having to constantly prove ourselves. I think one thing to think about that piece about not taken seriously is that whatever you're doing, and if you're the owner, the manager, whatever the case may be, but whatever the task you're doing, or if you're trying to create something for your laundromat, you are the expert in that. So whatever they think or say, they can continue to think or say, but I want you to know that you're the expert. So what you're doing is correct, and it's appropriate, and it's worthwhile, and it is beneficial, and it is for your company, and all of those things, because you're the expert. They're not the expert. So think about it in that space, that you are the expert.
I see the next two are kind of related. So one person is saying having issues with the whole family's dependence being on her. And the
Mhm,
other one sort of related is a challenge in creating space and time to be thoughtful and managing both, your staff, your business, while making sure everything gets done. So I think
mhm,
sometimes as women, we just tend to take on everything and think we can do everything.
mhm.
Those sort of seem related.
Yeah, yeah, we take the cape, put the cape on, right? I think that's the we put on the cape and go, right? It's the next thing. It's the next thing, right? We totally do that. So, I think I'm making space and time for from family, and even for yourself. It is an intentional thing. And I think the thing that I want to two things I want to stress from, and then that's in that statement, is that it is about being intentional. It's not about being grandiose. You don't have to do something huge or elaborate in order to make space or time for you or your family. It could be something really simple. It's just about being intentional. That's going to happen. That's what that's the space that I've learned, or the thing that I've learned, especially with kids. It's just about being intentional, and just for an example, I mean, in talking to my twins last night separately about, where we're going to go for lunch, and so they can choose where we're going to go, and next week, and so deciding what it is that they want to do, and they both are like overjoyed because they get to choose where we're going to go for lunch. I'm going to take them individually, right? And so it's nothing huge, and it's one day a month that it's just me and one of them, and we go to lunch. They get to choose where we want to go. It's usually no place I want to go. But but because I say it to them, it's intentional thing, so they feel it, and it is very powerful. So, I think thinking about that space, making things intentional, and it could be intentional in um, music. I think for ourselves, maybe taking a long shower, but I think we forget how important intentionality is to what it is we're doing. When it is intentional, it means more. It's a bigger emphasis. And whoever is a part of it, you or whoever's in your life is a part of it, comes to understand how important they are to you, because this has been an intentional thing that you're doing. And especially when you're tired, and you're right, and you're tired and you don't want to do anything, but it's, let me just read this one chapter for you, or let me just lay here and brush your hair, or let me just sit here and let's just talk about nothing. Or how about this piece of gum that I found, or this piece of gum, and let's split it, and we can each have a piece of it. I mean, it's just something like that. Because you're doing it, it makes it, again, because it's intentional, it goes a long way. So I think that is something to remember and to think about when you're trying to make space for that. And when you're thinking about in your laundromat and your employees, I think it's the same thing. It's intentional. I think it's asking them, whomever you're working with or trying to help, what is it that what do they want? What are they trying to achieve? And then asking them, how can you help them in that space? So that's giving it back to them. So that means it's not you coming up with all the things. It's you're asking them, giving them the homework. What is it that they need from you so they can accomplish whatever they're trying to accomplish? They come back with what it is they need from you. And then you can decide, I can do this. And actually, Kathy can do this. And Joe can do this. But this is what I can do. Right. So it gives you the space to be able to say, I can't do all five, but I can do one. But also gives them the ownership of what it is that they want to accomplish as well.
Yeah. So the next one, I think probably most of us have, as women, have had this. So assuming that you have a lack of knowledge, not taking seriously, and even inappropriate comments that can be demeaning or sexual. Um, I'm sure you've come across that at some point. And I think the hardest thing is, sometimes, especially in, younger years, you don't feel confident in saying anything. I think as we get older, maybe we become a little bit more confident, but like, how do
Mhm.
you address that if you're in that situation?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I tend to make it uh, uh, would be lighthearted. I don't know if that would be the term I'm looking for, but I say my comment back is something along the lines of, "Oh, I wonder what your mom would say if she heard that," or "What would your wife say if she heard that?" or "Huh, would your sister like that?" "Oh, let me call your sister and let her know this is what you said." I tend to go into that space of having them think about the female in their lives as opposed to making it about me. For them to hear, oh wait, that may not have been something I needed to say. And if I know their wife or their girlfriend or their sister's name, then I will say, you know, say the name. God, what do you think Sally would say if she heard that? I would literally say her name. So that way it's another thing. And because I find that because when I say it like that, um, they hear it. I'm not looking to change the behavior. I'm just looking for the person to understand that I I get what you're saying, and I need you to understand it's not okay. So let me turn it back to you, and that's what I'm just trying to do because I don't think, in my experience, that we're gonna change that. I don't think we're gonna change that person. I've worked with someone that thinks that the WNBA is a joke, that we women should not be playing basketball. I'm not going to change his opinion of that whatsoever. That's what he thinks. He thinks it shouldn't happen. I'm not going to change that. He makes it, makes a comment, and I throw it back to him, um, about just like something like that. I will say something. Oh yeah, yeah, Sue Bird did that, or what? I'll say something like this, so he hears it. But I'm not going to be able to change his mind, and I'm not going to put forth the effort, the energy to do that, because I know it's just not going to happen. But I want him to know that again, for him to
You
hear
disagree
me
with it,
say,
or you yeah.
correct. Hmm.
If
Yeah. Hmm.
someone makes this comment, say something, whatever, demeaning or inappropriate, and you're in a group, do you say the comment in the group? So for example, what you use, like if you're standing around the group and some guy does say something that, you kind of find inappropriate, do you say, "Oh, what would your mom say about that?" You do it within the group, or do you try to take them aside separately?
Hmm. I've done both, and it just kind of depends on my where I am at the moment. So I think that's probably the better as an answer to say where you are. There's been times where, I have not been in a space where, meaning that, there I can think of a time where, one of my kids was hurt. I needed to leave, and there was a comment made about things happening in people in my life, and why do I need to leave? And at the moment, I couldn't. I didn't have the space to actually address it because I was just, I got to get home. I got to take care. But then the next day I came back and said it to him, and and individually. But then there's also been a time where it hasn't. It wasn't something like that. I mean, it was a comment put to me about um oh, what is the Hidden Figures, the movie Hidden Figures. I hadn't seen it at the time, and I had a coach say to me, "You couldn't believe that I hadn't seen it." Being a black woman, why would I not watch a movie about black women? And we're in a room with there was a lot of people, and so I said, Do you watch every movie about a white man that has red hair?" And that was enough for him to go, "Oh, that was
That
kind
was
of inappropriate." Is
dumb.
that Yeah. I was like, "Yeah, that was very dumb," right? So I've done both, but I think it depends on, I think it depends on you, and that's the important thing.
Yeah,
If you can do it in the space with other people, then do. If you can't, then I think, take the person aside, um, um, and have the conversation. What I will stress though is that saying nothing actually becomes to hurt you later on, because it just gets worse and worse and worse because they think that you're okay with it, and then it just gets worse. So I think being able to, whenever you decide to say it, I don't think there's like a time of saying, "Oh, I need to say it. I have to say it the first time someone says something." I don't think it's that. I think it's just when you're comfortable to say it, but know that if you don't say it, it will just get worse.
makes sense. Let's see. We have quite a few here. So this is kind of related back to the other one that, so, many people on this webinar are entrepreneurs. So they find that, they do everything. So how do you find people with complementary skills to kind of round out your team?
Mm. Um, so this is gonna sound, it's gonna sound like a sales pitch. I'm not selling anything, just so you know. I'm not selling anything. But I actually do. It's called Working Genius. It's a quick little assessment that I give to folks and it gives you your widgets, like what your genius is and what you need to work at. And so being able to see um, where you fit with the people that you work with. And knowing that, because I think sometimes it's hard to find who is going to compliment you and who's not. I think sometimes it's really hard to
Yeah.
find because it may be someone that you really like, but they don't actually compliment you.
Yeah.
And so I think it's hard to try to figure that out. And so I think, um, in my experience, it's easier to find an assessment or someone that can give an assessment that can help you out. And I just like the Work in Genius because it gives you, you're able to see pretty clearly how someone that can work with you. Like for instance, my two are discernment and engagement. Um, and so working with someone that is a W, that is wonder, which is someone that thinks and processes a lot, for someone that has discernment, which is problem solution, for someone that wants to talk it, right? How that can be a conflict because I'm like problem solution and they're like process, right? And so being able to see, oh, I know this is what's going to happen when I'm working with this person because they need to do this. So that I know this is where it's going to be, so then I can kind of adjust. So I would say, again, I think there's so many out there. There's so many different assessments you can do. There's things you can get online. I think that would be a great space to do that. If nothing else, you could do strength finders. You can get the book
Yeah.
and do that, right? Do it online and be able to see where your strengths are and somebody else's strengths are. But I think in my experience, it's easier to do it with an assessment as opposed to just having the conversation because something gets missed. Your emotions get a part of it. You get past history gets a part of it, and you may make a decision with someone that to be a part of your team, but doesn't really need to be a part of a team just because of those things.
Um, So the next one, this is our friend from Nigeria. She
Mhm.
said this that managing human resources is one of the greatest challenges in Nigeria. She's tried to train women for free, but they claim it would affect their reproductive health. What would you say to encourage women like us because it could be overwhelming? Trying to
What
That's
affects reproductive? What
yeah, I'm not
I'm
sure
trying
if
to
that
understand. Okay.
means
Huh.
rejoice. Maybe if you can share a little bit more to help us understand what you're looking for. Um, let's see. Uh, so Jamie made a good comment. Let's see.
She's
So the weight of how do we change it for the next person? Meaning maybe
mm,
a comment someone says doesn't bug me because I've grown thick skin to it, but what should
mhm,
I respond with to help educate so the comment's not said to the next female? Like how to be a great ally in a kind way for women through education to continue evolving this industry to be more female friendly, right? So
mhm,
even if it doesn't necessarily bother you, but kind of paying it forward to the
mhm.
next women who uh,
Yeah, no, I think even if it doesn't bother you, I think it's an opportunity to say something. I think that's where you I actually think that's even where you should say something the most because it doesn't bother you. You're free to
right,
actually, go into it more because it doesn't bother you. Um, so I think just any comment that it's against or negative or whatever the case is about women, I think that's an opportunity to have the conversation. I think also you arm the person that is um, hopefully we're training women to do this. So you arm the person that's coming that you're working with or training or whatever the case may be that this is going to be the case. It's going to be like I said before, like my advisor said to me about the sports psych world. I mean, he armed me. I had no knowledge, but letting me know this was going to be the case, I was prepared for what I was going to be fighting against and moving in my career. So I think being able to arm them that this is how it's going to be, because I think um, and this is I don't think this is just women, I think it's people in general that we know it's going to be hard or we know something is going to be a certain way, but we think, "Oh, it's going to be fine. It's going to be fine." So I think being able to say, it's actually going to be this, right? It's and the way it's going to be fine is by having the conversation, making the comments, letting the person know, educating them, and being that advocate for not only for you, but for someone down the line, as you're saying, because in my um, in my experience, even if it's not for you, it's still for you. It's still for you. At some point, it's
right,
going to come back to and
right.
for you. So it may not affect you in the moment, but it's still for you.
It's also helping the person saying it because in some cases you hope they know what they said was inappropriate, but if they say it all the time and no one's ever called them out, they may not. So you
Hmm.
even gently pointing out that just so you know that comes across a certain way may make them
Hmm.
rethink what they say in the future.
Absolutely,
Mhm.
absolutely. And one thing I heard, I will say that I had a coach say to me years ago, which is something maybe for the women on here to hear and to take pride in that it is always good to have a woman in a situation, a meeting, a space, because it makes men have to act right or try to act right. So just us being there is a good thing because they're going to have to think about at some point, think about what they're saying. And us making little comments to say that wasn't appropriate is going to make them right. The training is going to be there. It may not change who they are away from there, but by God, when they're in the space with you, it's gonna right?
Yeah.
It's gonna be there. It's gonna be there.
Yeah.
And so just being the only woman or one or two women in a room with all men is a positive thing because they are going to have to adapt to us. Not that we adapt to them. They have to adapt to us.
Yeah. Yeah, good point. We have another good comment. So she's saying in the sort of the banking like financing like world, in that space, she has had this experience and has heard about where you're sort of looked over and not really pushed around, but made to feel as if your grasp of financials do not align with their vision of what they think you know. I feel like it's kind of like when you go to a mechanic. Like they just assume,
Mm,
you know, as a female that you don't know as much. And I don't know if you have had that, even if it's not in the finance world, if you've had that experience where
mhm,
they just kind of assume you're a woman, you don't know um, as much as they,
mhm. Sure.
or you know more than they think you know, I guess is a better
Sure.
way.
Sure. Yes. I mean, I definitely have had that happen, and I think obviously it happens way too often. The assumption that we don't know, and and I think that as everything we're talking about, obviously it's like an individual preference and how you handle it and what you do, and I think that this is still the same in the same space. It's like individual preference and how you handle and what you do, and um, I think if you're starting to feel less than as in that situation, I think that's a sign for you to be able to for you to show what you know and what you can do, and not in a space of um, uh, don't talk down to me. I'm not an idiot. I'm just because I'm a woman. This is when I know these things. Don't not in that kind of a space where I'm trying to make the other person feel bad. It's more of just showing that you know exactly what you're talking about. You when the opportunity comes, even if you're repeating um, what somebody else said to start it out, and then you go off on your own thought and what you believe, still do that as well. Maybe that even helps you in that space. But I think that if you're starting to feel less than, I think that's when you start to have to think you. It's better. It may be better for you to show, to stand up, to speak up, that you actually do know what you're doing, and what you're talking about, as opposed to continually feeling less than. Because again, it's just going to continue, and then that's going to start to eat at your confidence and your effectiveness, and we don't want that to be the case, right? We
Yeah.
want you to. Um, it's essentially you're just standing up for yourself to say, and it's not a I do know what I'm talking about. It's just answering whatever question or talking about whatever it is that they're talking about, or adding whatever twist to it that you want to, but it's just showing that you know what the carburetor does and why it needs to be cleaned out. I mean, you say it and so that way you are reinforcing to yourself that you know what you're talking about, that you can be in that room or you can be in that seat. I think that's the thing to think about.
Well, this was a fun little chat with you. We have a few minutes left, so maybe in the few minutes left, if you can give your sort of 30-second version of what we can expect at the luncheon that's coming up in August at our clean
Mhm.
show.
Sure. So what I'm going to talk about is from a female leadership perspective, how we as women can take on who we are, embrace who we are, all parts of us, right? The good and the bad, and use that in the room for us to be our best and to continue to grow, as opposed to not doing that. And so I'm going to talk about how you can bring your whole self into the space, and be proud of it, and make a mistake and still be proud of it, say the wrong thing and still be proud of it, right? And mispronounce something and still be proud of it. That's that's the things I'm going to talk about.
So we have one last question, which kind of it ties in nicely with what you just said. So
Mhm.
this is on, I guess, in on you. What are you most proud of in your career with how you've led as a woman in a man's industry?
What am I most? I th- mm, I think two things. The first I'm most proud about is every intern I've had has been a woman, and it's been intentional. I didn't even I don't take male interns because there's not very many women doing the job, and so I only took female interns. That's so and I will only continue to take female interns. Um, so
Lots of little applauses here. I don't know if you can see those.
so I'm very proud that I did that. Um, and I'm also very proud in my career that I have. Um, my twins, I took time, like 14 months, I stayed home with them, and went back to work. But in that time prior to quitting the Olympics and staying home, um, I was very much aware, that what was important to me at the time was to be home with my twins. I didn't apologize for it. I didn't explain it. I didn't, um, any of the other things. It was, this is what I'm going to do. People didn't understand it. They just, why would you quit the Olympics? It was a lot of things. And I let them think whatever they wanted because for me at the moment, that was a
It's
very
the right
important thing.
thing.
It
Mhm.
was the right thing. And so I, I'm very proud of the fact that I didn't allow other people's thoughts or me even trying to change them come into interfere with me staying home with my twins for 14 months. It was the right thing to do, and I'm very glad that I did it. And I think when I speak about it now, I talk about it in a space of, as a woman, I have the right to do that. I have an amazing career. I know what I'm doing, and I can stay home with my kids for a little bit if I want to, and that's okay.
And that is a tough decision because a lot of times you feel like if you step out, how do you step back in at
Hmm.
the level you want to be? And I know that's a struggle with so many working mothers. And I'm sure any of us on here of kids have dealt with that at some point and the whole mother's guilt and all of those things. So
Yeah.
good
Oh
for
my gosh.
you.
Yes.
Good for you. So I appreciate that. And I just want to bring up and share a little bit more about the luncheon. You guys can give me 1 second. So quickly, just some upcoming events. If you are or not attending Clean Show, we also do some local events. So these are all after Clean Show. So if you live in any of these areas, it's just a 2 hour local networking dinner event. And if you go to this website, you can see all of our events for the rest of the year. So Clean Show. So Clean Show takes place the 20 officially it starts on the 23rd through the 26th in Orlando at the convention center. CLA is doing some of our own events for people there. So on Friday, we're starting with a laundromat tour where it's a ticketed event. You hop on a bus, you get to see 4 different laundromats throughout the Orlando area. Of course, our highlight, which I will touch on a little bit more, is our luncheon with Wendy. Sunday evening, we do CLA is celebrating our 65th anniversary. So we're doing a very nice reception that evening. And then on Monday, once again, bringing women together for just a 1 hour wine, dessert, little happy hour. So our website has all of these activities. But what I really want to emphasize is our luncheon with Wendy. So it's going to be a 2 hour luncheon on that Sunday. So I know for some of you who work for some of the companies and have to be at your booth, hopefully you can take a little lunch break for this because I think it's after sitting with Wendy today, it's definitely worthwhile. So from 12 to 1, we will have our lunch and do a little networking at the tables. And then from 1 to 2 is when Wendy will speak. There'll be a little bit of time for questions at the end. So the link down here is where you can go directly to purchase the tickets. I think we are counting on about 125. We have a little over 60 registered, so we're halfway there. We tend to fill up for this event, so if you are attending Clean, highly recommend that you go on and register for this. All right, so with that, actually, I'll leave this up so you have the link. Thank you so much, Wendy, for spending an hour with us. It was great chatting with you. I look forward to the luncheon. I'm sure you and I will talk more about
Mhm.
details of that, but really looking forward to hearing your full presentation on August 24th. And for everyone else, thanks for attending. I hope you enjoyed it and hope to see everybody at Clean.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Thank you.